history of the Trump fortune. Good to have you with us. Rebecca Walser joins me now. She's a tax attorney and a specialist in all of this. So, one of my big takeaways was that the Times is arguing exactly the opposite of what President Trump argued on the campaign trail. He said, he gave me $1 million and I made it into this amazing fortune. The Times piece says, no. It was Dad who was super successful, and that he gifted a lot of this money to his children in order to prevent them from having to pay too much taxes on that transaction. Yeah. Is that true? Is that legal? Is that okay or not?
Martha, it strikes me that this is so comprehensive. I mean, this was an 18-month investigation by the Times. Unprecedented, it doesn't even describe it. Access to documents, confidential tax returns. No idea how these records actually got into the hands of the New York Times. So that is questionable right there. But whether or not however they got the documents, let's talk about what they show. And in the law, there's something called puffery, So someone can say something that they believe to, be, it's a bragging. It's a puffery. It's not something that we would say, oh, you've been completely fraudulently dishonest, And one thing we have to understand is since the beginning of the tax law code, in fact, there's a famous case, 1935, Gregory versus Halvering, where Judge Learned Hand, one of the most famous jurists in all of American jurisprudence, basically argued that there is no patriotic duty to prepare or pay more than you owe under the law. And that's what we have here.
As long as you're paying your taxes, you're allowed to be as creative as you can within the law.
Within the law.
That's one of the lines here. One of the specific areas is they talk about valuations.
Absolutely.
The valuations of the property.
Yeah.
And they argue that the properties that Fred Trump Sr. had were valued at $41 million, and it says the same set of buildings sold a decade later for 16 times that amount. So they're arguing that they marked them to market, or they marked them in a way that was not appropriate.
And at the same time that they state this, they also acknowledge that the appraiser that did the appraisals at the time of the passing of the estate was the same appraiser who's been doing this for 45 years and has appraised the New York Empire State Building, the Chrysler Building, the World Trade Center. So this is an appraiser who is knows New York City. And by the way, the IRS did attack the valuations, and the IRS did get some evaluation adjustments. So this is not like they were able to just, oh, this is only worth. Don't look at this.
It was also a period of extraordinary growth in real estate value from 1997 to 2008, right before the market crash.
What's happening here is they're using a legal strategy using the GRAT, the Grant to Retain Annuity Trust. And anytime you use a GRAT, which, by the way, Mark Zuckerberg has a GRAT already, okay? So anytime you use a GRAT, you get two things. You get a marketability discount if you don't have stocks, which real estate is not liquid like a stock, and you get a minority discount. So there were basically the Trump's estate passed in two major GRATs, Mary's and Fred's, and the children had to pay 1/3 of the balance in an annuity payment. Anytime you use a GRAT, you're going to get these legal evaluations of massive deductions. So I think that it's, suspect to say that there's this nefarious scheme going on when this has been a part of the code. In fact, it was made famous by Walton of the Walmart family in 2000. So this was something that the IRS has attacked.
I mean, either you have to change the tax code that is this thick for a reason, and all the tax attorneys respectfully who make their living off of crafting these and reading the letter of the law so that people can, basically do what they can within the law.
Completely legal. The other
You didn't see anything illegal in here?
It's hard to make that assessment based on a story, right? I haven't seen any of the underlying documentation. One thing that did stick out to me, though, that I read the documents, they had little attached documents all along. And they really made this big deal about this all-county building supply, where basically Fred basically would buy would pay for all these purchase orders for all of his buildings. Right. And basically they instituted a company in 1992 to run all the POs through. And they said they were getting these 20 to 50% markups. Mm-hmm. So
that's one thing that you have questions about.
No, I actually think that it's normal. This is standard operating procedure now in 2000s, by the way, Martha. People will extract the management overhead, operating businesses to an independent company, and then they will basically do markups because there's a management fee for these things. So to assign it some kind of scheme, I think is a stretch, really.
Thank you very much. Good to have you here, Rebecca Walser, who taught us a lot of things about the tax law tonight. Good to see you. So coming up next, brand new polls in key Senate races show the Kavanaugh